My daughter and her husband left me stranded in another country. A month later, I came back with 4.8 million. But the money could never erase what I felt that first night alone in Madrid, trembling from cold and terror. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would. And if you, for a second, feel like this sounds familiar, I just ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me to keep unburdening myself. My name is Elena Rodriguez. I'm 62 years old, a widow for 11 years, and I live in San Antonio, Texas. For decades, I was the woman who always said yes. Yes to caring for my sick husband until his last breath. Yes to raising Jessica on my own when he died. Yes to working double shifts, cleaning offices to pay for her college. Yes to selling my only piece of jewelry to help pay for her wedding. Always yes, never me. That morning of March 15th, when Jessica showed up at my door with a smile I hadn't seen in months, my heart fluttered like a schoolgirl's. She was wearing her navy blue dress, the one that looked so elegant on her, and she held a white envelope in her hands. "Mom, I have a surprise for you," she said, hugging me with a force I hadn't felt since she was little. "Ryan and I want to take you on a trip. To Spain. We already bought the tickets." I was frozen. Spain. The country I had seen in soap operas and documentaries, but a place I never thought I'd set foot in. Me, who had never even left Texas, whose only luxury was buying sweet pastries on Sundays from La Familia Bakery. Spain? Honey, but why would you spend so much money on me? I said, touching the envelope with trembling hands. You have your own expenses. The new house in the Dominion. Mom, you sacrificed your whole life for me. It's time for you to enjoy yourself. Ryan says you deserve this and so much more. Ryan, my son-in-law of 5 years, a man with a cold gaze who worked in some government office and always greeted me with a nod. Never a hug. But if he had suggested this, I couldn't sleep that night. I walked through my small 2-bedroom house, touching each object as if saying goodbye. The photo of my late husband Robert on the television, where he smiled in his mechanic's uniform. The Singer sewing machine that was my companion through so many years of extra work. The worn-out sofa where Jessica did her homework while I made dinner after getting home from my shift. I packed my oldest suitcase, a brown fabric one I'd bought at the flea market. I put in my 3 least-worn dresses, the lace veil that had been my mother's, my blessed rosary, and the family photo from the last birthday we celebrated together, when Jessica still gave me unhurried hugs. The flight was a dream. I had never been on a plane. Jessica sat next to me and explained how to fasten my seatbelt, how to chew gum so my ears wouldn't pop. For those 8 hours, she was the loving daughter I remembered. She brought me water, covered me with a blanket, and even took a smiling selfie with me. Madrid greeted me with a gray sky and a cold that chilled me to the bone. The apartment they had rented was in Lavapiés, a neighborhood full of colors and strange smells. It had 2 small bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, and a living room with a sofa that creaked every time someone sat down. "It's perfect, right, Mom?" Jessica said as she dropped her suitcase in the main room. "We'll be here for a week. The tour starts tomorrow." That first night, we had Serrano ham and bread they bought from a corner store. I felt like a queen. My daughter served me, asked if I was comfortable, if I was cold. Ryan even smiled when I told him everything was delicious. But something in their eyes, something wasn't right. It was as if they looked at me with pity, not with love. I lay down in the single bed in the small room, hearing their voices whispering in the room next door. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone. It was tense, urgent, like when you're planning something you don't want others to know about. At 6 in the morning on the second day, I woke up with a strange feeling in my chest. The house was too quiet. I got up slowly, with the stiffness that has been my companion every morning since my 50s, and walked barefoot to the living room. It was empty. Their suitcases were gone. Ryan's clothes were no longer hanging in the bathroom. Jessica's perfume no longer scented the air. On the kitchen table, a folded piece of paper. My name written in my daughter's handwriting, for Mom. My hands shook so much I had to sit down to read it. "Mom, forgive us. But this is for the best. You've lived your life. Now let us live ours. You can start over here, away from us. Don't look for us. This is final. P.S. We left your passport and documents at the Mexican consulate. Address: Carrera de San Jeronimo, 46. The note fell from my hands like a poisoned feather. I just sat there, in that strange kitchen, in a country I didn't know, feeling my chest empty out and fill with a cold I had never felt before. My daughter. My only daughter. The little girl I had carried in my arms when she had a fever. The one I had sung to every night until she fell asleep. The one for whom I had given up remarrying because nobody will love Mommy like I do. She had abandoned me like an old dog. And for the first time in 62 years, Elena Rodriguez was completely alone in the world. I sat there until the sun filtered through the dirty window, illuminating my face, swollen from crying. The hours passed like centuries, and my mind kept repeating the same question. How did I get here? I remembered when Jessica was 8 and got sick with pneumonia. I was working at Mr. Mauricio's textile factory then, earning a pittance, but it was the only thing I had found after Robert died. That night, my little girl was burning with fever and coughing like her soul was trying to escape. "Mommy, everything hurts," she told me in that little, broken voice that shattered my heart. I didn't have money for a private doctor. At the county hospital, they told me to wait 3 days for an appointment. 3 days. My daughter was dying, and they wanted me to wait. That same night, I pawned my wedding ring, the only valuable memory I had left of Robert. They gave me $100 for a piece of jewelry that had cost my husband a full month's salary, but I saved my daughter. And now that same little girl was abandoning me in a foreign country as if I were trash. I walked through the apartment like a lost soul. In the refrigerator, they had left an expired yogurt and half a bottle of water. In my wallet, $50 and €20 I had exchanged at the airport for emergencies. How ironic. This was the biggest emergency of my life, and I didn't even have enough for a coffee. I sat on the creaky sofa, and the memories kept coming like stab wounds. When Jessica turned 15, she wanted a party like her friend Fernanda's, with a princess dress and a mariachi band. I was working Monday to Sunday cleaning houses in the Heights, the wealthy community where the rich people of San Antonio lived. "Mom, all my friends are having a quinceañera except me," she complained one day, throwing herself dramatically onto her bed. "We're going to be the only poor ones in the class." Those words hurt more than any insult. My daughter was ashamed of me, of our situation. But instead of explaining the value of hard work and dignity, I decided to indulge her. I borrowed $5,000 from Mrs. Peterson, my neighbor, with an interest rate that had me paying it back for 2 years. But my Jessica had her party. I watched her waltz in a Mexican pink dress I had bought on credit, smiling as if she were the happiest girl in the world. I served the quesadillas and the punch, dressed in my best blouse, the only one without patches. "Thanks, Mommy, you're the best," she whispered in my ear while we danced. That's what made all the sacrifices worthwhile, right? A lie. A complete lie. Because 2 weeks after the party, when I came home tired from work and asked her to help with the dishes, she yelled at me, "I'm so sick of this damn house. I'm sick of being poor. All my friends have mothers who don't work as maids." That night, I cried so much that Mrs. Peterson came over to ask what was wrong. But I didn't tell her anything. You don't speak ill of your children, no matter how much their words hurt. Then came college. Jessica had been accepted into the business program at the University of Texas at San Antonio. I was so proud that I bragged to all the neighbors. "My daughter is going to be a college graduate," I'd tell them while hanging laundry in the yard. But the expenses? My God, the expenses. Tuition, books, transportation, food, appropriate clothes for college because, according to her, she couldn't show up dressed like she came from the flea market. I got a night job cleaning offices downtown. From 5 in the evening until 2 in the morning, Monday through Friday. My routine was hellish. I'd get home at 3 in the morning, sleep for 4 hours, make Jessica's breakfast, send her off with a kiss, and go to my day job cleaning houses. On weekends, I washed and ironed other people's clothes to earn a few extra dollars. My hands became like sandpaper. My back cracked every morning, but my girl was studying. My girl was going to be someone in life. When she graduated, I cried more than I did at Robert's funeral. There was my Jessica, in her cap and gown, receiving her diploma. She looked so beautiful, so elegant. All her classmates had their parents taking pictures with expensive cameras. I only had an old cell phone, but I captured every second of her moment of glory. "This is for you, Mommy," she said, hugging me after the ceremony. "All your sacrifice was worth it." Was it worth it? Now, sitting on this cold sofa in Madrid, I wonder if it really was. Because then came Ryan, this man she met at her first job, a City Hall official with an air of superiority and expensive suits. From the first day she brought him home, I knew he despised me. The way he looked at our humble living room, how he wrinkled his nose when I offered him hibiscus tea in my prettiest glass, the only one that wasn't chipped. "Mom, Ryan and I are getting married," she announced one Sunday after church. "So soon, honey? You've only known him for 6 months." "I'm not a little girl anymore, Mom. I know what I'm doing. Besides, he has a good job, his own house. I'll be able to give you grandchildren in a good situation. The wedding cost $25,000. $25,000 that I didn't have, but that I got by selling my parents' house. That little adobe home in Fredericksburg that I had inherited. My only property. My only security for my old age. But my daughter deserved a beautiful wedding, right? On the wedding day, Ryan didn't even ask me to dance. I spent the whole night serving the guests, making sure nothing was missing. My dress was borrowed from my dear friend Luce, and my shoes had a hole in the sole that I covered with duct tape. Jessica was gorgeous in her white dress. When I saw her walk down the aisle, I thought of Robert and how proud he would be of our daughter. But after the honeymoon, everything changed. The visits became sporadic. When she did come, it was always to ask for something. "Mom, can you lend me some money for the down payment on the car?" "Mom, we need money for the furniture." "Mom, Ryan says we need a bigger TV for when his bosses come over." And I, as always, said yes. I borrowed, pawned my few belongings, and found ways to get what they asked for, until I had nothing left to give. And then the reproaches began. "Mom, you're not the same anymore. You used to always support us." "Honey, I have nothing left to give. I can barely afford to eat." "Well, get another little job. You're still young." Another little job? I was 58 years old, with arthritis in my knees and a hernia that ached every time I lifted something heavy. The visits grew even more infrequent. The phone calls became cold, mechanical. "Hi, Mom. How are you?" "Oh, that's good. Listen, I'm busy. I'll call you later." But later never came. I spent my 60th birthday alone. I waited all afternoon for a call, a visit, anything. Nothing. At 9 o'clock at night, I ate a piece of sweet bread with a candle I had bought for myself. 2 days later, Jessica arrived with a supermarket cake and an apology. "Sorry, Mom, we totally forgot. Ryan had an important meeting and I had a headache." They forgot? They forgot the birthday of the woman who sacrificed her entire life for them? Now, in this empty apartment in Madrid, I understood the truth I hadn't wanted to accept for years. To my daughter, I was just a source of money and favors. When that source ran dry, I was no longer useful. And useless people are thrown away, just like they threw me away. Hunger began to gnaw at my stomach. I had spent the whole day without eating, just taking sips of tap water. Outside, Madrid carried on. People walked hurriedly, speaking in that Spanish accent that sounded musical but distant to me. I looked out the window and saw the world continue as if nothing had happened. As if there wasn't a 62-year-old Mexican-American woman abandoned by her own daughter on the 5th floor of an apartment in Lavapiés. No one knew I existed. No one would miss me if I disappeared. And for the first time in my life, Elena Rodriguez understood what it meant to be completely alone in the world. On the 3rd day without food, my body began to shake in a way I couldn't control. The apartment smelled of dampness and loneliness. I had drunk so much tap water that my stomach sloshed like a water balloon every time I moved. I had to get out. I had to find the consulate. I put on my best dress, the navy blue one I had saved for special occasions, and went out to face Madrid. The address was written on the paper I guarded like a treasure. Carrera de San Jeronimo, 46. But the streets of Madrid were a labyrinth I couldn't understand. I stopped an older gentleman walking his dog. "Excuse me, do you know where Carrera de San Jeronimo is?" He looked me up and down, noticed my American accent and my cheap clothes, and kept walking without a word. A young woman with headphones jogged past. I yelled the same question to her, but she didn't even turn her head. I walked for hours down streets that led nowhere. My shoes, the only closed-toe pair I had, began to hurt my feet. I could feel the blisters forming, but I couldn't stop. If I gave up, I would die in that apartment like an abandoned animal. At 5 in the afternoon, my legs gave out. I sat on the steps of a church and began to cry like a lost child. People passed by, looking at me with that mix of pity and annoyance reserved for the homeless. An elderly woman approached. She carried a cane and a plastic bag full of bread. "Are you all right, ma'am?" "I'm lost," I said between sobs. "I'm looking for the Mexican consulate and I don't know where it is." "Oh dear, you're very far. Don't you have money for the metro?" I shook my head, ashamed. "Wait here for me." She disappeared inside the church and returned with a young priest in his 40s. "This woman is lost, Father Michael. She says she's looking for the Mexican consulate." The priest sat beside me on the cold steps. "What is your name?" "Elena Rodriguez Vasquez. I'm from San Antonio, Texas." "And what are you doing alone in Madrid, Mrs. Rodriguez?" I couldn't hold back the tears. I told him everything in a rush. The trip, the note, the abandonment, the 3 days without food. Father Michael listened without judgment, with a patience only truly good people possess. "Rosalia," he said to the woman, "can you stay with her? I'm going to call a taxi." "I don't have money for a taxi, Father," I said, humiliated. "Don't you worry about that. The church has a fund for emergencies." We arrived at the consulate 15 minutes before it closed. The building was imposing, with the Mexican flag waving at the entrance. When I saw it, I cried with relief. It was like seeing a little piece of my country in a foreign land. The official on duty was named Lucy Hernandez, a woman in her 50s with her hair in a perfect bun. When I told her my story, she frowned. "Are you telling me that your daughter and son-in-law abandoned you here?" "Yes, miss. They left this note." I showed her the crumpled paper. Lucy read it twice and shook her head. "This is elder abandonment. It's a crime in both Mexico and Spain." A crime? It had never occurred to me that what they did to me was a crime. I just thought it was cruelty, pure evil. "We are going to file the appropriate report. But first, we need to find you a safe place." "Do you have anywhere to stay?" "I have nothing, miss. No money, no one I know, nothing." Lucy made a few calls. While I waited, they gave me coffee and cookies. It was the first hot food I'd had in days. It tasted like heaven. "Mrs. Rodriguez, we're going to take you to a shelter for vulnerable migrants. It's not a hotel, but you'll be safe and have hot meals." The shelter was in the Tetuan neighborhood, in an old but clean building. The director, an African woman named Amina, welcomed me with a genuine smile. "Welcome, Elena. You'll be safe here." My room was small but had the essentials: a single bed, a tiny closet, and a window overlooking an inner courtyard. The walls were painted a cheerful yellow that contrasted with the sadness I carried inside. The first night in a real bed after 3 days of hell should have been restful, but I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jessica's face saying, "You've lived your life, now let us live ours." How can a mother raise such a cruel daughter? Where did I go wrong? The days at the shelter passed as slowly as thick honey. We had breakfast at 8, coffee with milk and toast with jam. At 10, there were activities: Spanish classes for the Africans, job-seeking workshops for the Latin Americans, group therapy sessions for those who had suffered trauma. I didn't fit into any group. I was too old to look for work. I spoke Spanish perfectly, and my trauma was too personal to share with strangers. I spent my time sitting in the courtyard, watching the other residents rebuild their lives. There were young women who had fled war, single mothers seeking a better future for their children, elderly women like me, but who at least had the dignity of having left by their own choice. I was the only one who had been thrown away like trash. One afternoon, while I was helping in the kitchen peeling potatoes, a new woman arrived. She was Venezuelan in her 40s and held a little girl's hand. "My name is Rosa," she introduced herself. "This is my daughter Valentina." The little girl reminded me so much of Jessica when she was small that a lump formed in my throat. She had the same shy smile, the same big, curious eyes. "And why are you here?" Rosa asked me as she chopped an onion. I told her my story out loud for the first time. When I finished, Rosa stared at me with tears in her eyes. "Oh, Mrs. Elena, what a terrible daughter you got. But look, we're all broken in some way here. The important thing is how we put ourselves back together." Put myself back together? At 62? After a lifetime of sacrifices that ended in betrayal? That evening, Lucy from the consulate called me. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I have important news. We've been investigating your case and found something very strange." What is it, miss?" "You are listed as the majority owner of a company called Alimentos del Bajío S.A. Does that name mean anything to you?" My blood ran cold. Alimentos del Bajío was the company my late husband Robert had founded in 1987. He had closed it when he got sick in 2010. How could my name be on it? Yes, that was my husband's company, but he closed it more than 10 years ago. Well, according to the business registry, it was reactivated 5 months ago and has had transactions of almost $5 million. And you are listed as the sole owner, $5 million. An amount I had never seen in my entire life, but I knew nothing about it. There must be a mistake, Miss Lucy. I never signed anything. That's the strange part. We'll need you to come to the consulate tomorrow. We have to review the documents very carefully. I couldn't sleep a wink that night. My mind was spinning. What did that company have to do with me? Why was my name on something I didn't remember signing? And then, like a lightning bolt, the memory hit me. 6 months before my trip to Spain, Ryan had come to my house with some papers. "Elena, I need you to sign some documents for a Social Security matter. It's to update your information so you won't have problems with your benefits." I had signed without reading, trusting him. He was my son-in-law, my daughter's husband. Why would I distrust him? My God, what had I signed? The next day, I arrived at the consulate trembling. Lucy was waiting for me with a folder full of papers and a very serious expression. "Mrs. Rodriguez, what I'm about to show you is going to be shocking. Prepare yourself." She opened the folder and showed me documents with my signature. My signature perfectly forged on papers I had never seen. Contracts, powers of attorney, business registrations, all dated within the last 6 months. "Your son-in-law forged your signature and used it to reactivate your husband's company. He's been conducting business in your name, taking out million-dollar loans, selling properties you didn't even know you had." "Properties? What properties?" "Your husband, before he died, had bought several plots of land in the San Antonio area as an investment. They've been in your name since he passed. But since they never mentioned them, you didn't know." My head was spinning. Robert had bought land and never told me. Ryan had sold it without my knowledge. Jessica knew everything. "There's more," Lucy continued. "Your daughter is listed as the legal representative in several of these transactions." I felt as if I'd been hit in the chest with a hammer. My own daughter was an accomplice. They hadn't just abandoned me. They had been robbing me for months. What can I do? Everything they've done is illegal. Forgery, fraud, identity theft. And since the company and the properties are legally in your name, all that money belongs to you. I fell silent, processing. I had come to Spain a poor, abandoned woman, but it turned out I was a millionaire without knowing it. And my daughter, my only daughter, the reason for all my sacrifices, had been stealing from me while planning to get rid of me forever. The following days were a whirlwind of papers, stamps, and signatures. Lucy from the consulate worked like a detective, unraveling every lie Ryan and Jessica had built over months. Every document she showed me was like a slap in the face. "Look at this, Mrs. Rodriguez," she said, placing a sales contract in front of me. "Your son-in-law sold the land in Corregidora for $2.5 million. Here is your supposed signature authorizing the deal." The signature was perfect. Too perfect. Ryan had practiced imitating my handwriting for who knows how long. I remembered all those times he came over and asked me to sign insurance papers or city paperwork. He had been rehearsing right under my nose. And where is that money? Transferred to an account in the Cayman Islands. But since the sale is fraudulent, we have legal grounds to recover it. The consulate's lawyer, Mr. Hernandez, a serious man in his 60s, explained there was more. "Ma'am, your husband also left you 2 rental houses in downtown San Antonio. They've been paying rent to your daughter for 2 years. She told the tenants you were sick and that she was managing your affairs. 2 houses? Robert never told me about those. According to the documents, your husband wanted to leave you a secure inheritance, but he also wanted it to be a surprise until you turned 65. There's a sealed letter that was supposed to be opened on that date. A letter from Robert. My Robert, who had been dead for 11 years, had left instructions from beyond the grave to take care of me, and my own daughter had intercepted that care to steal it from me. Mr. Hernandez, can I read that letter now? Of course. With trembling hands, I opened the yellowed envelope. My husband's handwriting, which I would recognize anywhere, appeared before my eyes. My dearest Elena, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer with you, and you've reached an age where you need financial peace. For years, I worked quietly, buying land and properties without telling you so it would be a surprise. I wanted you to have a dignified old age, without money worries. The company, the land, the houses, it's all for you. You are the kindest woman I ever knew, and you deserve to be happy. I love you forever, Robert. I started crying right there, in the consulate office. I cried for Robert, for myself, for the years of poverty that didn't have to happen. My husband had left me wealthy, and I had lived like a pauper because my own daughter robbed me. There's more, Mrs. Rodriguez, the lawyer continued. Your son-in-law also took out $1 million loan using your current house as collateral. The house where you lived? My house? The house I've lived in for 12 years? That's the one. If the loan isn't paid, they will foreclose on it. And since you are listed as the debtor, they will sue you. My house. The last refuge I had left was also in jeopardy because of my son-in-law's evil deeds. That afternoon, Lucy helped me make the hardest calls of my life. First to the San Antonio police to file a formal complaint, then to the bank to freeze all the accounts, and finally, to Jessica. Hand me the phone, I told Lucy in a voice I didn't recognize as my own. It was cold, determined. I dialed my daughter's number. It rang 4 times before she answered. Mom? Her voice sounded nervous. Yes, it's your mom, the one you abandoned in Madrid. Silence. Mom, Be quiet, Jessica. Be quiet and listen carefully. I know everything. I know about the company. I know about the land. I know you've been robbing me for months while planning to get rid of me. It's not what you think, Mom. I said shut up, I yelled with a strength I didn't know I had. For 62 years I've been a good woman. Too good. So good that my own daughter thought she could use me and throw me away like trash. Mom, please. I've already filed a police report, Jessica. They're going to be looking for you and your husband for fraud, forgery, and elder abandonment. I hope it was worth it. You can't do this. I'm your daughter. Daughters don't abandon their mothers in foreign countries. Daughters don't steal from the women who sacrifice their whole lives for them. I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking, but for the first time in months, it wasn't from fear. It was from anger. A righteous anger I had been bottling up for years. My phone rang immediately. Jessica calling back. I didn't answer. It rang again. I didn't answer. On the 3rd ring, I turned the device off. 2 days later, Ryan called me at the consulate. Lucy put him on speakerphone so she could listen too. Elena, it's all a misunderstanding. His voice was desperate. We didn't mean to hurt you. Oh no. Then what do you call forging my signature? It was to protect you. You didn't know how to handle that much money. You could have been scammed. Protect me? By abandoning me in another country? That was Jessica's idea. I didn't want to, but she said it was for the best. The coward was already blaming his wife. Ryan, you two are just as crooked. Both of you are thieves. Elena, we can fix this. We'll give everything back and forget this ever happened. Nothing is going to be forgotten. You're going to return every last cent you stole, and you're going to go to jail. You can't do this to us. Think about your daughter. My daughter died the day she left me in Madrid. Whatever is left of her will have to face the consequences. I hung up and felt stronger than ever, but the call that hurt the most came 3 days later. It was my grandnephew Sebastian, the son of a distant cousin whom Jessica had emotionally adopted when he was 8. He was 16 now. Grandma Elena, why are you doing this to my Aunt Jessica? His broken little voice tore my heart out. Jessica had sent the boy to manipulate me. Sebastian, honey, your aunt did some very terrible things to me. She stole from me and abandoned me. But she says you're making it all up because you're angry. Do you think I'm capable of making something like that up? A long silence. I don't know, Grandma. I'm confused. Sebastian, when you're your aunt's age, you'll understand that there are some things you don't even do to your enemies, much less your own mother. Is Aunt Jessica going to go to jail? I don't know, son. The judges will decide that. I don't want you to be alone, Grandma. And that's when my voice broke. That 16-year-old boy had more heart than my 32-year-old daughter. I won't be alone, Sebastian. I'm going to be fine. When are you coming back from Spain? Very soon, son. Very soon. When I hung up, Lucy put a hand on my shoulder. Are you okay, Mrs. Rodriguez? No, I said honestly. I'm not okay, but I will be. That night, alone in my room at the shelter, I made the most important decision of my life. I wasn't just going to get my money back. I wasn't just going to see my daughter pay for her crimes. I was going to return to Texas as a completely different woman, a woman who would no longer let anyone walk all over her, a woman who had learned that being good doesn't mean being a fool, a woman who was going to start living for herself for the first time in 62 years. The next day I called Lucy. Miss Hernandez, I want you to make all the arrangements to return to Texas next week. I have some unfinished business to attend to. Are you sure, Mrs. Rodriguez? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. It was time to go home, but not as the broken woman who had left Texas. I was going back as a property owner, an entrepreneur, a millionaire, and as a mother who had finally learned that you can't buy love with sacrifices. The plane landed at the San Antonio airport on a Tuesday morning. It was the same airport I had left a month and a half ago, but I was not the same woman. I carried documents in my purse that proved I was the owner of $4.8 million in assets. In my heart, I carried a strength I never knew existed. Mr. Mendoza, a lawyer the consulate had recommended, was waiting for me in the arrivals hall. He was a man in his 50s, serious but kind, who had been reviewing my case from Madrid. Mrs. Rodriguez, everything is ready, he said as we walked towards the exit. The accounts are frozen, the properties are secured, and tomorrow we file the formal lawsuits. And my house? The house where I lived? That's good news. Since the loan was made with forged documents, the bank has no legal claim on the property. I've already notified them that they will be proceeding against the person who actually signed for the loan. My house. My humble but my own little house. I knew Jessica and Ryan would be living there, thinking I would never come back. Mr. Mendoza? I want to go there right now. Are you sure? It could be very confrontational. I've been confrontational for a month and a half. One more day isn't going to hurt me. We arrived at my house at noon. Ryan's pickup truck was in the driveway. My little garden, which I tended to with so much love, was neglected. The bougainvillea plants I had pruned before I left were dry. No one had bothered to water them. I knocked on the door. My own door. Jessica opened it, wearing a robe, her face looking like she'd slept poorly. When she saw me, her expression crumbled. Mom, what are you doing here? I've come to my house, I said, with a calmness that surprised even me. Mom, we can talk. There's nothing to talk about, Jessica. Get out of my house. Ryan appeared behind her, also in his underwear. He looked haggard, nervous. Elena, we can explain everything. Don't call me Elena. You're nothing to me anymore. Mr. D. Mendoza stepped forward. I am Mrs. Rodriguez's attorney. You have 1 hour to vacate this property. If you don't, I will call the police. This is my house too, Jessica screamed. I grew up here. This house is in your mother's name, the lawyer replied. And considering you are facing criminal charges, it would be unwise for you to remain here. Seeing my daughter plead hurt me, but not as much as remembering that morning in Madrid when I woke up abandoned. You have 1 hour, I repeated. 1 hour to get your things and hand over the keys. Mom, please. I'm your daughter. My daughter died in an apartment in Madrid, I said, looking her straight in the eyes. You're a stranger who looks like her. She started to cry, crocodile tears that no longer moved a single muscle in me. What's going to happen to us? Where are we going to live? You should have thought about that before you robbed me and abandoned me. Ryan tried to approach me. Elena, all the money is intact. We can give it all back. Intact? I asked. The 2.5 million you spent is intact? That money? We invested that money. We can give it back to you, doubled in 3 months. Invested? What did you invest my money in? They fell silent. What did you invest my money in? I repeated, my voice louder. In a car, Jessica mumbled. A car? You spent 2.5 million on a car? Not just that. Also on the house we rented in Alamo Heights. We rented? Who is we? We rented a house in Alamo Heights with a pool, for when we had kids. I stood there silently, processing. They had spent my money on luxuries for themselves while they sent me off to die in another country. You heard him, I said to the lawyer. They're going to have to pay back every last cent for those luxuries. An hour later, I watched my daughter and my ex-son-in-law carry suitcases and boxes out of my house. Jessica was crying her eyes out, but she no longer inspired pity or pain in me, only exhaustion. When they left, I stood in the living room of my own house. Everything was the same, but different. The furniture was the same, but the atmosphere felt strange, as if intruders had been living in my space. That first night alone in my house, after everything that had happened, I made myself something I hadn't in years. A dinner just for me. I went to H-E-B and bought a steak, fresh vegetables, a bottle of red wine. I spent without guilt, without thinking about saving for emergencies, or putting something aside for when Jessica needs something. I cooked while listening to music on the radio, dancing alone in my kitchen. I set the table for one with my good china, the set I kept for special occasions that never came. I poured myself a glass of wine and toasted myself. To Elena Rodriguez, I said out loud. To the woman who survived it all. That night, I slept like I hadn't slept in years, without worrying about emergency calls, without listening for Jessica to see if she needed anything, without anguish over money I didn't have. I woke up at 9 in the morning. 9 in the morning. It had been decades since I'd woken up so late. I had always been one to get up at 5 to make breakfast, clean, go to work. I stayed in bed for another half hour just because I could. Then I took a long shower, put on a dress I hadn't worn in years because why should I get dressed up if I'm not going anywhere? And ate a leisurely breakfast. At 11, Mr. Mendoza arrived with more news. Mrs. Rodriguez, we have regained access to your 2 rental properties. The tenants are very happy to know you're back. I also have the bank statements for the company, Alimentos del Bajío. How much is there in total? Between the properties, the recovered land and the company accounts, we're talking about $4.8 million. But there's more. Your late husband also had shares in a local construction company that are now worth another $800,000. $5,600,000. An amount I never thought I would see in my lifetime. And what about Jessica and Ryan? They are being summoned to testify next week. The charges are serious. Forgery, aggravated fraud, elder abandonment. Ryan could face up to 8 years in prison. And Jessica? As an accomplice? Up to 5 years. 5 years. My daughter could go to prison for 5 years for what she did to me. You know what I felt? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that scared me more than any pain. That afternoon, I walked through my neighborhood as if seeing it for the first time. Mrs. Peterson, my neighbor, saw me from her window and ran out. Elena, I thought you were gone for good. Your daughter said you had stayed to live in Spain with some relatives. No, Esperanza, I was just visiting. And how was it? Did you like it? It was educational. I didn't tell her anything else. Deep wounds are not for sharing with nosy, albeit well-intentioned neighbors. That night, I called my grandnephew Sebastian. Grandma Elena? Hi, honey. How are you? Sad. Aunt Jessica is crying all day. She says you're going to put her in jail. Sebastian, your aunt did very bad things. Now she has to face the consequences. But do you forgive her? Forgiveness is a big word, son. First, there has to be true remorse. And if she repents, will you forgive her? I was quiet for a long time. Sebastian, some wounds are so deep they scar over, but they will always ache when it rains. I don't understand. You'll understand when you're older. After hanging up, I poured myself another glass of wine and sat on my patio. I had already watered the plants I had found dry. Some would recover, others wouldn't. But I was going to keep taking care of them. just like I was going to take care of myself from now on. For the first time in 62 years, Elena Rodriguez didn't have to take care of anyone but herself, and it felt strange, but it also felt free. The next day I did something I never thought I would. I walked into a travel agency. "Good morning," I said to the young woman. "I want to plan a trip." "Just for me?" "Perfect. Where would you like to go?" "Everywhere," I said, smiling. "I'm 62 years old and I have a whole life ahead of me." A week after the eviction, I received a call I was expecting but didn't want to answer. It was my dear friend Luz, Jessica's godmother. "Elena, what is going on?" "Jessica came to my house in tears saying you went crazy in Spain and want to put her in jail." "Crazy?" I repeated, feeling my temperature rise. "Did she tell you she abandoned me in Madrid without money, without documents, without anything?" "She said you stayed of your own free will, that you wanted to see Spain." "Luz, she and Ryan stole almost $5 million from me. They forged my signature for months." Silence on the other end of the line. "Elena, that sounds very exaggerated." "Exaggerated? I have all the documents. I have the proof." "But Elena, she's your daughter. Blood is thicker than water." That phrase. That damned phrase I had heard my whole life to justify enduring any family abuse. "You know what, Luz? Blood can also spoil." I hung up, and with that call, I understood that I hadn't just lost my daughter. I had also lost half the world who thought I was the villain of the story. 2 days later, Sebastian showed up at my door. His eyes were red from crying. "Grandma, can I come in?" "Of course, son." He sat in my living room as if it were the first time he'd ever been to my house. Everything felt different now. "Aunt Jessica sent me to talk to you." "Of course." Using the boy as a messenger again. "What did she tell you to tell me?" "That she asks for your forgiveness on her behalf. That she's learned her lesson and will never hurt you again." "And what do you think?" He was quiet for a moment, fiddling with his hands. "I don't know, Grandma. I love her very much, but what she did to you was really wrong." "Sebastian, did you know anything about what was happening?" "A little. Ryan was bragging that they suddenly had a lot of money. They bought a new car, rented a really nice house. But I didn't know it was your money. And when they told you I had stayed in Spain, Aunt Jessica cried a lot. She said she missed you very much, but that it was for the best for you. My 16-year-old grandnephew had more analytical skills than the adults around me. What do you want me to tell your aunt?" "Tell her that if she wants to talk to me, she needs to come herself. Without Ryan. No intermediaries. She needs to come alone and face me." "Are you going to forgive her?" "I don't know, Sebastian. Honestly, I don't know." That same night, as if she had overheard our conversation, Jessica knocked on my door. She was alone, without makeup, her hair a mess. She looked haggard. "Can I come in, Mom?" "It's my house. You can come in." She sat on the edge of the sofa like an uncomfortable guest. "Mom, I know I screwed up." "Screwed up is an understatement, Jessica." I know, and I have no excuse. Ryan convinced me it was for the best for everyone." "Don't give me that Ryan convinced you line. You signed the papers. You were an accomplice." "I was afraid of being broke, Mom. Ryan lost his job at the city 8 months ago and didn't tell me. We were drowning in debt. That was new information." "Ryan hasn't had a job for 8 months?" "No. That's why we needed the money so desperately. When he did some digging and found out Dad had left you properties, we thought that—" "You thought what? That you could rob me and get rid of me?" "That wasn't the intention. At first we were just going to borrow—" "Borrow? Without telling me?" "We knew you would say no." "Of course I would have said no. It was my money." She started crying, tears that once would have shattered my heart. "Mom, please. I love you. You're my mom. Mothers don't get abandoned in foreign countries, Jessica. That was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life." "Hard for you? It was hard for you?" "Yes. I cried the entire flight back." "You cried? And that's supposed to make me feel better?" "Mom, I thought you would be better off in Spain, that you would meet people, that you would start a new life. Start a new life at 62, with no money, no documents, not knowing a soul. I didn't think it would be so hard." "You didn't think. That's the key. You didn't think because you didn't care." She got up from the sofa and knelt in front of me. "Mom, forgive me. Please forgive me." We'll give back all the money and forget this. Forget? Forget that I spent 3 nights sleeping on a bench in Madrid? Forget that I thought I was going to die alone in a foreign country? Mom, forget that my own daughter, the child I sacrificed my whole life for, thought so little of me that she felt entitled to rob me and throw me away like trash. Stop saying that. It's the truth, Jessica. That is the plain truth. She remained quiet, still kneeling before me. What can I do to fix this? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Some things can't be fixed. Will you ever forgive me? I don't know. And even if I did, nothing will ever be the same. What's going to happen to me? To Ryan? You're going to face the consequences of what you did, like responsible adults. Are we going to jail? A judge will decide that. Mom, please. Please, nothing, Jessica. I begged you please for years. Please respect me. Please value me. Please don't treat me like a burden. And you never listened. I do respect you. You respect me? Is robbing and abandoning me respect? She stood up and wiped her tears. No matter what I say, you're not going to believe me. Exactly. I will never believe you again. And our relationship? What relationship? You destroyed it in an apartment in Madrid. She walked to the door. Mom, someday you're going to realize you made mistakes with me too. My mistakes? What mistakes? You spoiled me. You gave me everything without teaching me the value of things. You made me believe I deserved everything. Those words hit me like a slap, because there was some truth to them. You're right, I said. My mistake was loving you more than I loved myself, but that doesn't justify what you did to me. I know, and I will regret it for the rest of my life. I hope so. I hope you regret it every single day so you never do this to anyone again. She opened the door. Mom? What? Do you hate me? I was quiet for a long moment. I don't hate you, Jessica, but I don't recognize you anymore. The daughter I raised would never have done this to me. I'm still that daughter. No, that daughter died for me in Madrid. She closed the door softly. I remained sitting in my living room in absolute silence. An hour later, Ryan arrived. He banged on the door as if he was going to break it down. Elena, we need to talk. I opened the door. He was agitated, sweating. Did Jessica already tell you I'm not dropping the charges? You can't do this to us. We're family. Family doesn't steal, Ryan. That money was going to be Jessica's anyway when you died. When I died? You already had my death planned out? I didn't say that. Yes, you did. You said my money was going to be yours when I died. Is that why you took me to Spain? To speed up the process? You're crazy. I'd be crazy to forgive you after what you did. You're going to destroy our lives. You destroyed mine first. He got aggressive, stepping too close. Listen to me carefully. If you don't drop these charges, you'll end up with no family. No one. I haven't had a family for a while now, Ryan, and I'd rather be alone than surrounded by thieves. You'll see. When you're old and sick, you're going to need us. I won't need you for anything. I have enough money to pay for the best care. My money. Your money? What money of yours? The money I invested. That I made grow. The money you stole from a company you didn't even know existed? He fell silent. Get out of my house, Ryan, and don't ever come back. This isn't over. Are you threatening me? I'm telling you that actions have consequences. Yes, they do. And you're about to learn all about the consequences of yours. He left, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. That night, alone in my house, I opened an expensive bottle of wine I had bought that afternoon. I poured myself a glass and took out the family photo from the last birthday we had celebrated together from my wallet. There we were, the three of us, Jessica, Ryan, and me, smiling as if we were happy. What a perfect lie we had built. I tore the photo into tiny pieces and threw them in the trash. Then I poured another glass of wine and made one more toast. To Elena Rodriguez. To the woman who finally learned to say no. 3 months after tearing up that photo, I woke up on a Saturday morning without the tightness in my chest that had been my companion for years. For the first time in decades, my first thought wasn't, what does Jessica need? Or, how am I going to get money to help her? My first thought was, what do I want to do today? I got up slowly, without rushing. I no longer had to wake up early for anyone. I no longer had to make breakfast for anyone but myself. I no longer had to check my phone for emergency calls or desperate requests. I poured myself a coffee in my favorite mug, the white porcelain one with blue flowers that I had inherited from my mother and kept for special occasions. Now all my days were special occasions. I sat on my renovated patio. With part of the recovered money, I had hired a gardener to help me rescue my plants. My bougainvilleas were blooming again. My geraniums were full of color, and I had planted new flowers that I had never dared to buy because they were too expensive for something that was just going to die. Everything was alive, including me. The doorbell rang at 10 in the morning. It was Sebastian, but this time he was with a woman I didn't know. "Grandma Elena, this is my therapist, Dr. Patricia." A woman in her 40s, dressed simply but elegantly, extended her hand to me. "Mrs. Rodriguez, it's a pleasure to meet you. Sebastian has told me a lot about you. All good things, I hope?" I asked with a smile. "All very interesting. May we talk?" The three of us sat in my living room. Sebastian looked nervous. "Grandma, I asked the doctor to come because I want to understand what happened to our family." The therapist settled into her chair. "Sebastian is processing what you as a family have been through. He has been very mature in seeking professional help to understand it." "And what do you want to know?" "I would like to hear your version of events, Mrs. Rodriguez." I told her everything, from the beginning. The sacrifices, the abandonment, the theft, the return, the confrontations. Sebastian listened in silence, sometimes with teary eyes. "How do you feel now?" the doctor asked me. "Free," I answered without hesitation. "For the first time in my life, completely free." "You don't feel resentment?" "You know what? At first I did, a lot. But resentment is a heavy burden to carry, and I've carried enough weight in my life. Have you thought about forgiving your daughter?" "Forgiveness is a very big word, doctor. It requires genuine remorse from the other side. And so far, I haven't seen it." Sebastian spoke for the first time. "Grandma, Aunt Jessica cries every day. Honey, there's a difference between crying out of self-pity and crying for the hurt you've caused others." The doctor nodded. "Sebastian, your grandmother is right. True remorse includes doing everything possible to repair the damage done." "And have they tried to repair the damage?" I asked my grandnephew. "Ryan says you're an ungrateful woman. And Jessica? She says she's waiting for you to cool off." "For me to cool off? As if this were a childish tantrum?" The doctor intervened. "Mrs. Rodriguez, it's very common for people who commit this type of abuse to minimize their actions. It helps them cope with the guilt." "Doctor, I don't need them to minimize anything anymore. I need them to face the consequences." After they left, I kept thinking about that conversation. It was true that I didn't feel as much resentment anymore, but I didn't feel love either. I felt empty, an emptiness that was perhaps better than the pain. That afternoon, I did something I had been putting off. I went to visit Robert's grave. St. Joseph's Cemetery was quiet. I walked to his gray granite headstone, which I kept clean but hadn't visited in months. "Hello, my love," I said, sitting on the small concrete bench in front of his grave. "I have so much to tell you." I told him everything. The trip, the abandonment, the discovery of the money, the properties he had secretly left me, Jessica's betrayal. "You know what the saddest part is, Robert. She never knew the strong woman I was before I became her mother. When I was young, I was decisive, independent. But I became the woman I thought I needed to be to raise her right." The wind rustled the leaves of the tree that shaded his grave. "I spoiled myself by being her mother, Robert. I gave her so much unconditional love that she never learned to value it. And now it's too late to teach her." I cried for a while, but not from sadness. I cried with relief. For the first time, I was crying for myself, not for others. "I'm going to be okay, my love. I'm going to live the years I have left for me, as I should have done since you've been gone." When I got home, there was a message on my phone. It was from a real estate agency in Santa Fe, New Mexico. "Mrs. Rodriguez, we have a property we think you'll be very interested in. Could you come see it on Monday?" Santa Fe. That artistic city that had always seemed like a dream but completely unattainable. On Monday, I drove there. The property was a small but beautiful house in the historic downtown area. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with a window that opened to a patio full of bougainvillea, and a living room with high ceilings and wooden beams. It's perfect for a single person who wants tranquility, the agent told me. The previous owner was a French painter who lived here for 30 years. How much is it? $300,000. $300,000. Less than half of what I had. I'll take it. Don't you want to think about it? Consult with your family? I don't have a family, and I've already thought about it. A week later, I signed the papers. I was the owner of a house in Santa Fe. But before I moved, I had something to do. I called Sebastian. Would you like to come with me to do something important? What is it, Grandma? We're going to open a savings account for you, for your college education. Grandma, you don't have to. I have to. You're the only one in the family who cared about me as a person, not as a source of money. We opened an account with $100,000 in his name. $100,000 that no one could touch until he turned 18. Grandma, that's too much money. It's exactly what you need to study whatever you want, wherever you want. What if Aunt Jessica gets mad? Sebastian, from now on, you are going to make your own decisions, not the ones that are convenient for your aunt or any other adult. That same day, I did something else I had been planning. I went to a lawyer's office and drew up my will. Sebastian would receive $200,000 when he turned 25. The rest of my money would be donated to a shelter for women abandoned by their families that I was planning to open. Jessica did not appear in the will, not a single mention. When the lawyer asked if I was sure, I told him, completely sure. My daughter already received the entire inheritance I was going to give her. I spent it raising her. That night, my last night in my San Antonio house, I packed only the essentials. Clothes, a few photos of Robert and my parents, my most beloved plants, the books I truly enjoyed reading. Everything else I left for the house. The furniture, the television, the appliances. The house would be closed up until I decided what to do with it. I sat in my empty living room with a glass of wine and thought about everything I had lived through within those walls. The good times with Robert, Jessica's first steps, the sleepless nights when she was sick, the homework afternoons, the teenage arguments, the graduation, the wedding, the bad times too, the fights over money, the dismissive looks, the emotional blackmail, the abandonment. Thank you for everything, little house, I said out loud. You were a good home while it lasted. At 6 a.m, I put my last suitcases in my car. I had bought a new Honda CR-V, comfortable and safe, my first new car in my entire life. I drove toward Santa Fe as the sun was rising. A Beatles song was playing on the radio. Here Comes the Sun. For the first time in 62 years, Elena Rodriguez was going to discover who she was when she didn't have to be anyone's selfless mother. She was going to discover who Elena was, simply Elena. And for the first time in decades, she was eager to meet that woman. 6 months after moving to Santa Fe, I woke up in my new house as if I had been born again. The sun's rays filtered through my bedroom windows, illuminating the adobe walls painted a soft yellow that I had chosen myself. Yellow like sunflowers, like hope, like everything I had decided my new life would be. It was 8 a.m, and outside I could hear the typical murmur of Santa Fe, the bells of the cathedral basilica, the street vendors offering breakfast burritos, the tourists walking on the historic plaza, the sounds of life, of movement, of a world continuing on its natural course. I got up without rushing, as I had learned to do everything in this new chapter. I put on my pink silk robe, the one I had bought for myself the first week I lived here because I liked it, and because I could afford it. Reasons so simple that they would have seemed like unforgivable frivolities before. In the kitchen, as I made my coffee in my new Italian coffee maker, the phone rang. I no longer jumped when it rang. I no longer automatically assumed it was an emergency or someone needing something from me. It was Sebastian. Good morning, Grandma. How did you sleep? Good morning, honey. I slept very well. And you? How are classes going? Good, Grandma. Hey, I have some news. His tone was serious. I sat at my new dining table, the rustic wooden one I had bought at an antique shop downtown. What happened? Ryan was sentenced yesterday. 6 years in prison. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't satisfaction, but it wasn't pity either. It was peace. Quiet justice. And Jessica? 3 years of probation. She's not going to prison. but she has to pay a very large fine and do community service. How is she? Not good, Grandma. Not good at all. She's living with my mom because she has nowhere else to go. My younger sister, of course. Jessica had gone to take refuge with her aunt, the only person in the family who didn't know the whole truth. And how are you with all of this? Sad, but okay. My therapist says it's normal to feel mixed emotions. Sebastian, there's something I want you to understand very clearly. What happened between your aunt and me has nothing to do with you. You will always be my grandnephew. You will always have my love. I know, Grandma. And I also want you to know that I understand why you did what you did. After hanging up, I sat for a long time, looking out my kitchen window at the patio where I had planted new flowers. Red geraniums, purple petunias, and a new bougainvillea that was already beginning to climb the wall. Everything was growing. Everything was blooming, as it should be. That afternoon, like every Thursday, I went to my appointment with Dr. Ruiz, the therapist I had started seeing when I moved to Santa Fe. She was a woman in her 60s, elegant and wise, who had helped me understand many things about myself. Elena, how do you feel knowing that the legal case is closed? Peaceful, doctor. As if justice has finally been served. Do you not feel sadness for your daughter? Yes, but not for the woman she became. I feel sadness for the little girl she was, and that I didn't know how to guide better. We've talked a lot about this. You are not responsible for the decisions she made as an adult. I know, doctor. My head knows that. My heart is still learning. Have you considered the possibility that one day she might seek a genuine reconciliation? Yes. And if that day comes, I will be open to listening. But I will no longer beg for love from anyone. What does that mean to you? It means that if someone wants to be in my life, it has to be because they value my company, not because they need something from me. I left therapy and walked through the streets of Santa Fe. It was my favorite routine, walking without a rush, looking at the Pueblo-style buildings, greeting the vendors who now knew me, sitting on the main plaza to watch life go by. On one of the benches in the plaza, I saw a woman my age crying discreetly. Something in her posture reminded me of myself 6 months ago. I approached her. "Excuse me, are you okay?" She looked up. Her eyes were swollen from crying. "My son kicked me out of his house," she said. "He says he's too old to be taking care of his mom." Ah, another Elena. Another woman discarded by the family she had raised. I sat down next to her. "Do you want to talk about it?" Her name was Rosa. She was 67, and for the last 5 years, she had lived with her son and daughter-in-law, taking care of her 3 grandchildren. The daughter-in-law never wanted her there, but tolerated her presence because she needed a free babysitter. Now that the children were older, they had decided that Grandma was in the way. "I don't know what I'm going to do," she told me. "My Social Security isn't enough to rent a decent place." "Do you have other children?" 2 daughters, but they live out of state. I haven't seen them in years. I gave her my phone number. "Rosa, call me tomorrow. I went through something similar, and maybe I can help you." The next day, Rosa called me. I offered to go with her to see some small houses for rent near my own. With what I was paying for a large house, she could afford something more modest but dignified. "But I don't have enough for the security deposit." "I'll lend it to you. You can pay me back when you can." "Why would you do that for me? You don't know me." "Rosa, when you're at the bottom of a well, any hand that helps you climb out is a blessing. Someone helped me when I needed it. Now it's my turn to help someone else." That was the first woman I helped. Then came Ellen, abandoned by her children after she sold her house to pay for their college tuition. Then Martha, whose son stole her pension for 2 years until she had nothing left. One after another, women my age who had discovered that the unconditional love they gave their families was not returned when they needed it. With every story I heard, I understood more clearly that my experience was not unique. It was part of a cultural pattern where mothers sacrifice themselves to the point of destruction, raising children who learn to take without giving. 6 months after helping Rosa, I made the most important decision of my new life. I used $1 million of my money to open the House of Dignity, a shelter and support center for older women abandoned by their families. It wasn't just a place to sleep. It was a place where these women could rebuild their self-esteem, learn new skills, find work if they needed it, and above all, understand that they had a right to be valued. The opening was on a bright day in May. The mayor came, as did the local media, and many people who wanted to support the project. But the most important thing for me was to see the faces of the first 10 women who moved into the house. Women like me, like Rosa, like Ellen, women who had learned they were not alone. In my opening speech, I said something that came straight from my heart. This house doesn't exist to help victims. It exists to remind strong women that they temporarily forgot their own worth. After the ceremony, I stood alone in the house's garden, watching the sunset. Santa Fe looked beautiful from there, with its domes and bell towers silhouetted against the pink sky. My phone vibrated. A text message from an unknown number. "Mom, I saw the story about your shelter on the news. I'm proud of you, Jessica." I stared at the message for a long time. Jessica had found my new number, had seen the news, had decided to write to me. After 10 minutes, I wrote my reply. "Thank you. I hope you are well." And I put the phone away without waiting for a response. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. But it wasn't resentment either. It was simply life, continuing on. That night, in my house in Santa Fe, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my patio under the stars. The bougainvilleas now covered the entire back wall, creating a cascade of color that moved gently in the night breeze. I thought about everything that had happened in these past months, about the woman I was before and the woman I was now, about what I had lost and what I had gained. I had lost my daughter, but I had found my dignity. I had lost a dysfunctional family, but I had gained a community of women who supported each other. I had lost the habit of sacrificing myself, but I had gained the ability to love myself. For the first time at 63, Elena Rodriguez was whole. Not because she had everything she wanted, but because she finally knew what she was worth, and she was worth so much more than she had ever allowed herself to believe. The wind rustled the leaves of my bougainvillea, creating dancing shadows on the patio walls. I raised my glass to the stars and made one last toast. To all the women who are learning to love themselves as much as they love others. To all those who are discovering that it's never too late to start over. And on that perfect night in Santa Fe, Elena Rodriguez closed her eyes and smiled, knowing she had found exactly what she had been searching for her whole life without knowing it. The peace of living for herself. And you, listening to me, have you lived through or do you know someone who has gone through something similar? If this story touched your heart, tell me in the comments if you've also had to learn to value yourself. If you liked this video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel so this message can reach someone who needs to hear it.